Please be seated. Provost Coatsworth, Executive Vice President Dirks, faculty, colleagues, alumni, doctoral candidates, and especially their mothers. Families and friends, good afternoon and welcome to Convocation for Ph.D. candidates in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. I thank you all for coming to celebrate the accomplishments of our Ph.D. candidates. We honor today a superb group that on commencement this coming Wednesday will join the ranks of our close to 38,000 alumni and will embark on academic or professional careers around the world. Equally important, we honor today the families and friends of our candidates who have endured with them the grueling marathon of the PhD. Thank you for being so supportive and above all, so very patient. I would ask all doctoral candidates to rise and applaud those family members and friends who have helped them be here today. Today, an outstanding PhD candidate and a distinguished alumnus who is also a member of the faculty will address the Assembly in turn. The PhD candidate's remarks will be offered by Mr. Abhishek Ganguly, a doctoral candidate in the Department of English and Comparative Literature. Mr. Abhishek Ganguly successfully defended his dissertation on January 27th, entitled The Poetics and Politics of Translation in Contemporary Drama, 1960 to 1990s. Professor Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak and Martin Puchner directed his dissertation. Other members of the Defense Committee were Professors Brent Edwards, Gauri Visvanathan, and Bruce Robbins. Mr. Ganguly received a BA with honors in 1998 from Presidency College, University of Calcutta, and an MA in 2000 in English and Linguistics from Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. He earned a second MA and an MPhil from Columbia in 2003 and 2005, respectively, and will earn the PhD on Wednesday. Mr. Ganguly was awarded the Marjorie Hope Nicholson Fellowship, the Mellon Summer Research Fellowship, the Sainsbury Student Support Grant from Columbia's Arts Initiative, and a seed grant from Sarai, the new media initiative from the Center for the Study of Developing Societies in Delhi, for studying contemporary urban musical performances in Calcutta. As a PhD student, he instructed in the undergraduate writing program as a teaching assistant in the Multiculturalism Joint Seminar in the Institute for Comparative Literature and Society and Columbia Law School. He has lectured at the University of Delhi and Bryant University. He has presented his research at a dozen international professional conferences. Mr. Ganguly is an assistant professor of English at the Rhode Island School of Design. Mr. Ganguly.
Provost Coatsworth, Executive Vice President Dirks, Dean Alonso, members of the faculty, administration and staff, family, friends, and fellow graduates. It is an extraordinary privilege to represent the graduating class of 2012. Thank you, Dean Alonso, for inviting me to speak at the PhD Convocation this year. Thank you, Associate Dean Beatrice Terrian, for walking me through this. On behalf of the graduating class, I would like to begin by thanking the professors who have taught us, challenged us, and guided us through all these years. I would like to thank my advisor, Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak, for her tremendous support and for being an extraordinarily generous mentor along the way. I also want to thank the family and friends of all of today's graduates, whose faith in our ambitions and abilities have undoubtedly been vital to our successful completion of this journey of 5, 6, 7, or more years studying at this great university in this extraordinary city. When I walked onto campus for the first time on the bright fall morning almost 9 years ago, I thought I knew in my head the exact topic I was going to research, down to a working bibliography and at least 2 alternative titles for my as yet unborn dissertation. It could have been the pressure of entering the department, English and Comparative Literature for me. It could have been the pressure of entering the department that had pioneered my fields of study, post-colonial studies and the still somewhat oddly named Anglophone literatures. It could have been the excitement of joining a brilliant academic community that o'er its diversity and globality lightly but confidently, situated as it was in the heart of New York City next to vibrant Harlem. Whatever it was, it somehow felt like the right thing to do at that time. Today, looking back, it seems an endearing moment of intellectual naivety. But it was also the first instance of what was to become a consistent marker of my academic life. And I don't know if I share this with any of you, but an obsessive-compulsive desire to over-prepare. Over-prepare for presentations, for conferences, for publications, and now for teaching. Little wonder then that exactly 1 semester and 3 graduate seminars later, I realized that that first dissertation had to wait. My ideas, my professors assured me, were very much worth pursuing, but they still contained reading list-sized holes that had to be covered over. Yet what was more troubling was perhaps the realization that I had interesting thoughts running off in many more directions than I had initially suspected. Not all of that has ended up well, but it has been one exhilarating journey, intellectual journey that has taken me all over campus to courses in anthropology and sociology, architecture and film studies, even to Barnard and the law school, and in one intrepid instance to the cafeteria at the CUNY Grad Center where David Harvey taught his free open class on reading Marx's Capital every Friday evening. And in between coffee-fueled all-nighters and standing room-only guest lectures, one day I ended up in a seminar that was being taught by Edward Said. I did not realize then that it was going to be the last class Professor Said would ever teach before his untimely death. I'll never forget the day when, after we had collectively failed to recognize the significance of a particular sartorial detail mentioned in Gustave Flaubert's well-known 19th century novel, Sentimental Education, and we were a smart bunch, my cohort in the English department, Professor Said, after we had failed to answer him, he wistfully wondered aloud, "Who lets you guys into graduate school these days?" So thank you, Columbia, for keeping it real. Inside and outside of classrooms, inside, outside, and beyond lectures and seminars, office hours, and conferences, and at the numerous life-sustaining cafes, bars, food carts, and restaurants in this neighborhood, I witnessed that quality of the real, a certain grittiness, translate into a spirit of critical thinking and intellectual skepticism, cynicism even, as we made lifelong friends and commiserated with comrades in arms. Today, as we formally take leave of the mothership, I sincerely hope that that fortitude will endure, that enlightened skepticism will continue to flourish, not just when we are faced with the simple pressure to conform, but more important, when we find ourselves within complicated ethical and political double binds, where acting in an either-or manner could have disastrous consequences. Let me share with you how this relates to my own work. In my dissertation, I tried to put forward a relationship between translation and the formation of collectivity. I focused on a range of contemporary plays from around the world to demonstrate the relationship. The notion of translation I was working with inevitably went beyond its conventional understanding as simply a communicative act or interlingual transfer and ended up looking like that familiar double bind. Everything is translatable, nothing is translatable. Translation is necessary, translation is impossible. While keeping this double bind visible, I attempted to extend the domain of translation by arguing that it is the very substance of literary form and dramatic technique. Translation as figured in these texts also emerged to be a political instrument. To count politically, we need to form a group, but every group necessarily leaves someone out. Even as translation in the theater helps form collectivities, who translates for the excluded? I believe it is increasingly important for us to remember this question as we seek to place our research and scholarship in the real world, the world of the illegal immigrant and the working poor, and on the best days, the world where we hope to build our lives and communities from and around. There is a disturbing crisis in higher education in the United States at this moment. We graduates are today standing closest to perhaps only one aspect of it, the increasingly bleak prospect of secure and decently paid academic employment at the end of a stint in graduate school spent in obtaining the highest qualification in the field. We are extremely happy for those of us who have found the jobs they wanted and thought they deserved at the end of their PhDs. And I must say I'm very lucky to be one of them. And I wish all the very best from all of us to those of us who are yet to do so. On the one hand, there is a rising proportion of adjuncts in the profession, probably most acute in the humanities and the social sciences, the talk of an impending crisis in academic publishing, the increasingly higher research productivity needed for the shrinking number of entry-level academic positions. And on the other hand, the alarming rate at which the costs of attending college are outstripping the growth of real income, making it increasingly unaffordable for most people, our future students. All of these should concern us directly, and I'm sure they already do for many, if not all of us, as we step out of graduate school. But the question, who translates for the excluded, allows us to imagine the ripple effect of this crisis beyond Columbia, in the corners of our world, where the global community must also exclude. It is the cautious optimism and intellectual skepticism, the hallmark of my Columbia education, as I mentioned earlier, that makes me recount these stark facts on what is, without doubt, an extremely proud and celebratory moment for all of us. As a former, and therefore forever New Yorker, I repeat that winter slogan, remember the neediest, upon this warm day in May, even as I extend again a big thank you to our professors and a huge felicitation and good luck wish to all my fellow funny cap wearers who have accomplished that one tremendous thing, successfully completed a PhD degree. Now, doctors, let's go ahead and have a blast just as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ganguly. Now I would like to present the Dean's Award for Distinguished Achievement to a PhD alumnus in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences to Professor Eric Foner. The Graduate School of Arts and Sciences holds in highest regard intellectual inquiry that exerts a profound impact not only in academia, but the larger world as well. Today, we honor you, Eric Foner, an alumnus of the graduate school whose historical scholarship has enhanced our understanding of our nation and ourselves. A native of New York City, you first came to Columbia as an undergraduate, graduating summa cum laude from Columbia University in 1963. As a recipient of the prestigious Kellett Fellowship, you earned a second bachelor's degree at Oriel College at the University of Oxford, then returned to Columbia to complete your doctorate under the supervision of the renowned historian Richard Hofstadter. Over the past 4 decades, your work has explored America's intellectual, political, and social landscapes in such publications as Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 through 77, which received the Bancroft Prize, the Parkman Prize, and the Los Angeles Times Book Award. The Story of Freedom, a masterful examination of the nation's most cherished idea from the colonial period to the late 20th century, and your most recent book, The Fiery Trial, Abraham Lincoln and American Slavery, which was awarded the Bancroft Prize, the Pulitzer Prize for History, and the Lincoln Prize. You have exemplified service to your discipline with tenures as president of the Organization of American Historians, the American Historical Association, and the Society of American Historians. You have also helped to shape popular understanding of American history, curating prize-winning exhibitions on the Civil War and Reconstruction, and consulting on historical landmark and museums operated by the National Park Service, as well as historical exhibits at Disney World and Disneyland. As a DeWitt Clinton Professor of History at Columbia, you have mentored a number of talented graduate students and received both the Great Teachers Award from the Society of Columbia graduates and the university's Presidential Award for Outstanding Teaching. In recognition of your exceptional career and for being a model of what a Columbia graduate student can accomplish, the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences is delighted to present you, Eric Foner, with the Dean's Award for Distinguished Achievement. The doctoral address will be offered by Professor Foner.
Thank you very much, Dean Alonso. Dean Alonso, Provost Coatsworth, Executive Vice President Dirks, colleagues, and of course, doctoral candidates and your families and friends, It's a privilege to address you on this occasion. I have been invited to speak at a point of transition in my own career. I have just completed my last year of full-time teaching at Columbia, although I will be teaching part-time for the next 4 years before riding off into the sunset. This moment brings back memories of my own experience as a student and some of the teachers who shaped my life as a historian. The finest teacher I have ever known was my father, Jack Foner. Deprived of his livelihood during the McCarthy era because of his political beliefs, he made his living by freelance lecturing. Listening to his lectures, I came to appreciate how present concerns can be illuminated by the study of the past, how the depredations of McCarthyism recalled the days of the Alien and Sedition Acts, how the civil rights movement needed to be viewed in light of the struggles of black and white abolitionists a century before, and how in the brutal suppression of the Philippine movement for independence at the turn of the 20th century, something omitted from textbooks at that time, could be found the antecedents of the American intervention in Vietnam. This was history as collective memory and understanding, forging a living link between the past and the present. Beginning in 1959, I was an undergraduate and then graduate student here. Of course, Columbia was a far different institution than it is today. The college was all male and essentially all white. The Department of History had no black faculty member and only one woman, Nina Garsoyan, a specialist on the history of Armenia. The curriculum was resolutely traditional, no social history, women's history, African American history. But on its chosen terrain, the history of American politics, diplomacy, and intellectual life, the education was unrivaled. I received my Ph.D. in 1969. In keeping with the spirit of the times, I did not attend the commencement ceremony, although I have a vague recollection that it may not have taken place at all, since in that year, as well as in 1968 and 1970, the university shut down early because of student demonstrations. I fondly recall some of the teachers I encountered here and the lessons I learned from them. There was James P. Shenton, a flamboyant lecturer who conveyed his passion for the Civil War era so powerfully that the period has remained the focus of my own scholarship ever since. And there was my doctoral supervisor, Richard Hofstadter, renowned for his penetrating intellect and sparkling literary style. His advice about the craft of writing, make war on the verb to be, and 90% of writing is rewriting, those remain maxims we should all still try to live by. I have often reflected on how working with Hofstadter shaped my own career. My work is centered on the history of political ideas and the relationship between politics and society. The answers I have given differ markedly from his, but these are Hofstadter questions. It is customary on occasions like this to wish the graduates well, as of course I do, and to call upon you to pursue your individual dreams while also helping to improve the world we live in. But I want to place on you a responsibility as well. In whatever area you apply your talents, in whatever walk of life you find yourself, I want to urge you to dedicate yourselves to keeping alive your Columbia education's most cherished inheritance, respect for the life of the mind. In today's society, this is not an easy task. In the last generation, the values of the market have come to permeate every aspect of our society. The notion that the public good may be measured in other than economic terms has pretty much been abandoned. The philosopher William James once wrote that an hour spent communing with nature must be considered a worthless hour of life when measured by the usual standards of commercial value. The same can be said for an hour contemplating a work of art or reading a work of history. As a result, as my colleague Andrew Delbanco observes in his new book, College, arguments for higher education today are almost always couched in economic terms. Having more educated people is good for the economy or for the social advancement of individuals. Unfortunately, as Delbanco points out, this outlook helps account for the fact that literature, history, philosophy, and the arts, subjects that do not seem to increase economic productivity, are on their way to becoming stepchildren at all levels of education. Perhaps not at Columbia, but at most public schools and institutions of higher learning. Let me illustrate my point with one small episode. In his generous introduction, Dean Alonso neglected to mention the real highlight of my career, my appearance on the Colbert Report. Afterwards, one student remarked, "Professor, you may as well retire now because you will never top that." You may wonder, does a guest get paid to appear with Colbert? You do not, but you do receive a $100 certificate that can be donated to a charity via an online network. So I looked at the website for worthy causes in New York City. I alighted upon a posting from an elementary school music teacher in the Bronx. She was not able to conduct classes for her students because the school could not afford sheet music. So I donated my $100 to enable her to buy the sheet music. This is pathetic. The United States spends more money on weaponry than all other countries combined, but we cannot afford sheet music for public school students. What does this tell us about our priorities? Shortly before his death in 1970, Newsweek published an interview with Richard Hofstadter. It was a melancholy reflection on a society confronting what he called a crisis of the spirit. Young people, said Hofstadter, had no sense of vocation, no aspirations for the future. He rejected the young radical's stance of moral indignation as a kind of elitism on the part of those who did not have to face the day-to-day task of earning a living. But he acknowledged the real roots of their alienation. He said, "You have a major urban crisis, you have the question of race, and you have a cruel and unnecessary war. Ultimately," he went on, "American society, not just its children, had to change." 4 decades later, we again face a crisis, not just a crisis of the economy, but another crisis of the spirit. We live in a world where scientific knowledge is subordinated to political and religious dogma, where intellect and expertise are denigrated as elitist, where demands proliferate that history be taught as an exercise in national self-congratulation, not critical self-examination. This is the frame of mind that divides the world and America itself into the forces of good and the forces of evil, and sees every dissenting view as disloyalty. Today, Hofstadter's call for Americans to reorient our values seems more relevant than ever. And the study of history, although it may not contribute much to economic productivity, may offer assistance. Many years ago, Charles Francis Adams, the president of the American Historical Association, noted that, quote, "The historical point of view is an important point of view, for only when approached historically can any issue be understood in its manifold relations with a complex civilization." The economical outlook, he went on, vital as it unquestionably often is, comes much lower in the scale. These observations are as apropos now as in 1900 when Adams spoke. For the study of history instills the very qualities so lacking among policymakers and more broadly today: the value of critical inquiry, of subjecting all beliefs to the test of reason and experience, of questioning dogmas, whether political, religious, or economic, that demand uniformity of thought. The historical frame of mind, the foundation of this university's idea of a liberal education, may assist Americans in candidly facing our problems and reordering our priorities so that in the future Columbia's values and those of the nation may once again coincide. Congratulations again to the graduates, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Professor Furman. I now have the pleasure of introducing Ms. Angela Gia, a Ph.D. student in pathobiology and molecular medicine, and the president of GSAS, the Graduate Student Advisory Council. She will present the Faculty Mentoring Award to Professor Diane Vaughn in the Department of Sociology and to Professor Eleanor Sterling in the Department of Ecology, Evolution, and Environmental Biology. Ms. Gia.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Today, I have the distinct privilege of representing the graduate student body in awarding the Faculty Membership Award to two most deserving candidates. The Faculty Membership Award is given every year by the students to faculty who have gone above and beyond their call of duty to assist, guide, and nurture their students along their path of academic and professional development. This award recognizes outstanding faculty members and shows appreciation for the exceptional support they have provided to us students. They truly exemplify excellence in graduate education, in their roles as advisor, mentor, advocate, and friend. I am honored to present the first award to Diane Vaughn, professor in the Department of Sociology. Her students, ranging from current Ph.D. candidates to assistant professors, describe her as a tireless and outstanding advisor, an inspiration to graduate students, extremely accessible and giving mentor, and never haughty or arrogant about her opinions, despite her prolific presence in sociological thought today. Professor Vaughn's humble openness and sincere, consistent intellectual engagement testifies not only to her integrity as a researcher, but also to her standing as a true role model for aspiring researchers and professional social scientists. On behalf of all graduate students, thank you, Professor Vaughn. The second award is to Eleanor Sterling, adjunct professor in the Department of Ecology, Evolution, and Environmental Biology. Despite working full-time as the director of the American Museum of Natural History Center for Biodiversity and Conservation, her students both at Columbia and overseas praise that she is constantly available, that truly not a student in the department has remained untouched by her tremendous generosity of time, advice, and career support. Professor Sterling helped found the E3B department and has worked tirelessly to improve it since its inception. She has tremendous integrity and advocates for better mentorship of graduate students throughout the department. Her students describe her as the critical motivational force at all key junctures in their PhD journeys. It is my honor to present the second award to Professor Sterling. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Ms. Gia, and congratulations to Professor Vaughn and Sterling. Provost Coatsworth will now present the Presidential Award for Outstanding Teaching to three current PhD student teaching assistants. The students who will receive today's Presidential Teaching Awards were selected from many nominations by a committee that included both faculty and graduate students. Provost Coatsworth, would you please come forward? There are three PhD students who are receiving the award today. Carlos Montes Galdon in the Department of Economics, and Julie Kolb in the Department of English and Comparative Literature, and Joseph Wu in the Department of Chemical Engineering. Carlos Montes Galdon. In just a few short years, you have proven yourself to be a skilled and dynamic teacher of economics, imparting to your students a deep understanding of the ways that rigorous analysis can shed light on the world around us. Your creativity and clarity have earned the enduring appreciation and admiration of your students who have flocked to your recitations and discussion sections. They extol the extraordinary quality and breadth of instructional materials you have prepared and praise your responsiveness at all hours of the day or night. You have a bright future ahead of you as both scholar and educator. Columbia is proud to recognize your accomplishments by awarding you the 2012 Presidential Award for Outstanding Teaching by a graduate student. and Julie Kolb in the Department of English and Comparative Literature. As a teacher of university writing, literature, humanities, and courses in literary studies, you teach the ways in which precise attention combined with passion can open literary texts onto the world that surrounds them. You inspired your students through your gift for language, your trademark enthusiasm, and your boundless generosity. Your students describe you as a talented classroom presence who is devoted to the intellectual discourse you seek to foster and is constantly willing to extend pedagogy outside the classroom. You have also served as a valuable mentor to your fellow writing instructors. You are a literary scholar whose teaching is engaging, erudite, and genuinely humane. With pride, we join your students in praising your excellence as an educator with the 2012 Presidential Award for Outstanding Teaching by a graduate student. And finally, Joseph Wu in the Department of Chemical Engineering. Teaching the fundamentals of chemical engineering is no easy task, yet your students praise you as a remarkable instructor, capable of simplifying the most difficult concepts. Your students celebrate your remarkable ability to reveal and highlight the core principles at the heart of the engineering problems you present to them. They value the supportive learning environment you create and your patient determination that every student in your class will succeed. Your teaching is informed in equal measure by empathy and technical skill. In recognition of your exemplary service and professional promise, the university is pleased to confer upon you the 2012 Presidential Award for Outstanding Teaching by a Graduate Student. We now arrive at the central point of the ceremony, the presentation of the doctoral candidates. We ask you to come forth as we call your name in recognition of your individual accomplishments. Professor Andy Tucker of the Ph.D. program in Communications will read the names of the Ph.D. candidates as they approach the podium.
From Anthropology, Marie-Sylvie Abelin. Nadia Lone. John Horn Carter. Anne Catherine Homan. From Applied Mathematics, Anil Raj. Material Science and Engineering, Teresa Ann Fazio. Applied Physics, Daisuke Shiraki. APAM Applied Physics, Maria Kamenetska. Ophir Gathon. APAM Material Science and Engineering, Timur Davis. Ji Gao. Sean Lawrence Berry. Art History and Archaeology, Paige Stevens Knox. Joseph Fai Lowe. Teresa Marie Harris. Jessica Bassiano. Kimlee T. Moynihan. Amy Ng. Carolyn York Yerkes. Patrick Crowley. Olivia Shannon Powell. Sonia Drimmer. Jeffrey Alexander Miller. Astronomy, Andrea Svedin. Biochemistry and Molecular Physics, Biophysics, Daphne Christina Anastasides Avgosti. Biochemistry and Molecular Biophysics, Pallav Kosuri. Biological Sciences, Ashok Koil Chander. Linda Yu. Christina A. Doyle. Christine Ann Denny. Zita Peterlin. Ambar Asghar Salam. Benedetta Marie Nalieri. Biomedical Engineering, Sarin Pumirat. Brenda Chen. Molly Lara Flexman. Avital Mendelsohn. Bronte Shah. Yao Sheng Tung. Biomedical Informatics, Ninad Pradeep Duwal. Jonathan William Keeling. Wei Xiong, Biostatics. Hua Ho Chen. Nanshi Shah. Business, Min Wang. Roger Douglas Lederman. Damla Gunesh. Aharon Cohen Moliver. Sirhi Horovi. Xiaojing Meng. Hannah Lee. Ravindra Vodili Sostri. Bjarni Torfason. Cell Biology, Noreen Kibria. Nicholas Dennis Carbone, Chemical Engineering. Niha Sareen. Jamil Feshitan. Chemical Physics, Jejuan Chen. Jianing Li. Chemistry, Li Wen Cheng. Jiang Wang. Lingo Wang. Benjamin Isaac Dash. Margaret Mary Elvicrogue. Severin Thomas Schnebieli. Jeffrey Ransdell Lancaster. Rohitha Srimaratnaman. Civil Engineering and Engineering Mechanics, Arturo Humberto Montoya. Badri Hiriyor. Ben Lashinsky. Pablo Prieto Monios. Theo Pang. Dukjin Ju. Classics, Howard Xiao Hao Chen. Patrick O'Farrell Gautier. Ian Halim. Communications, Holly Johnson. Philip Kay. Computer Science, Jay Woo Lee. Joshua Reich. David Kleiger Elson. Hila Becker. Malek Ben Salem. Yingbo Song. Maritza Johnson. Mitchell Joseph Iosa Morris. Blake Shaw. Bert Huang. Kumiko Ono. Mikala Merler. East Asian Languages and Cultures, Jimin Kim. Takuya Hino. Adam Paul Bronson. Nathan Powell Shockey. Hitomi Yoshio. Robert James Tuck. Earth and Environmental Engineering, Kunyi Lin. Christina Karamperidu. Mackenzie Primorano Cone. Wei Du. Jing Li. Ashley Elizabeth Schuler. Jennifer Haley Levy. Zachary Tesler. Elias Duker. Ecology, Evolution, and Environmental Biology, Elizabeth Stevens Nichols. Marcia Macedo. Megan Micheline McGinty. Economics, William Walker Hanlon. Ryan Ahmad Sharour. David Robert D. Reamer. Joshua Elliott Greenfield. Eribato Tapia. Herodis Steingrimsdottir. Demetrius Korsaros. Uliana Loginova. Elizabeth Jean Akers. William Reed Walker. Wilfredo Aloro Lim, Jr. Sebastian Rondeau. Ozge Akinci. Marisa Ann Herman. Hitoshi Shigeoka. Marcos Yamada Nakaguma. Leslie Jean Turner. Christine Pai Chi. Alexander Fraser McQuoid. Beliu Astatik Haile. Yao Asumoa Owusu Ansa. Takakazu Honryo. Electrical Engineering, Segi Hong. Serdar Kojaman. Simeon Ryalov. Matthew Leigh Johnston. John Barbosa Vicente, Jr. Guido Hahamovich. Kevin Shu. English and Comparative Literature, Elizabeth Andrews MacArthur. Sharon Ann Fulton. Jennifer Marie James. Abigail Catherine Joseph. Christine Varnado. Abhishek Ganguly. Mbangi Sena Butalezi. Environmental Health Sciences, Alan Carpenter Just. Epidemiology, Veronica Maya Freisinger. Samantha Garbers. Russell McBride. Nikki Patricia Palmetto. Monica Pogorzelska. French and Romance Philology, Anel Marie Karula. Genetics and Development, Ripla Aurora. Germanic Languages, Agnieszka Legutko. Sarah Panitera. Julia Nordman. History, Megan Doherty. Jennifer Elise Tommy. Mary Catherine Wabel. Carlos Galvez Peña. James Chappell. Daniel Scott Asen. Samir Adam Megeli. Robert Marshall Neer, Jr. Ty Stein Jones. Michael Woodsworth. Operations Research, Tiam-Hugh Lee. Sun-Min Ko. Nedet Serhat Ibut. Latin American and Iberian Cultures, Mario Eloy Valero. Mathematics, Adam Joshua Jacob. Alice Rizzardo. Svetlana Vanova Petkova. Harold Mark Sultan. Mechanical Engineering, Panayotis Spiros Kotsidas. Muin Suleiman Erstop. Anurag Mathur. Microbiology, Immunology, and Infection, Sujatha Gurunathan. Middle East, South Asian, and African Studies, Audrey Trushke. Music, Melissa Gonzalez. Christy K. Riggs. Mark Cito. Lou Wang. Andrew Lawrence Herringer. Victoria Tsotkova. Nursing, Pamela Blythe de Cordova. Anne Margaret Navarra. Andrew Bartlett Phillips. Nutritional and Metabolic Biology, Kelly Ruggles. Chuchun Liz Cheng. Marianne Lul Abdullahi. Colleen Renee Rizek. Roxanne Dutia. Diana D'Ambrosio. Pathobiology and Molecular Medicine, Celia Denise Keim. Tanet Kang Samaksin. Pharmacology and Molecular Signaling, Tahilia J. Rebello. Philosophy, Bo Carmel Shaw. Michael Robert Stevenson. Physics, Aaron Richard Angerani. Alexander Vincent Penson. Robert Dumoulin. Guillaume Plant. Shirjing Li. Yu Zhao. Jun Zhao. Xiaoyung Jin. Trevor David Nathaniel Rohn. Political Science, Martin Jorge Ardanas. Michael Charles Beckley. Poliang Zhu. Milan Vaishnav. Laura Beth Paler. Kelly Teresa Rader. Diane Roberta Funstein. Reiko Huang. Quinn Mulroy. David Joseph O'Connell. Patrice Howard. Hyun Kyung Kim. Psychology, Jared Javier van Snellenberg. Lauren Yvette Atlas. Julie Ann Spicer. Jason Thomas Buell. Brian Thomas Denny. Changbang Park. Michelle Wan. Religion, Abigail Susan Kluchin. Slavic languages, Emma K. Lieber. Social work, Kenneth Terrell Jones. Rumiko Kakishima Akashi. David Harris. Sociomedical Sciences, Maria Dolce Natividad. Deborah Jane Pelto. TC Comparative International and International Education, Amra Shabik El Reyes. TC Philosophy and Education, Martha Moore Crowley. TC Mathematics Education, Diane Rose Murray. TC Politics and Education, Jonathan Sullivan Gurko. TC Counseling Psychology, Shekeva Pamela Hall. TC Clinical Psychology, George Coolidge Nitzberg. TC English Education, Julie LaRue Porter. TC Science Education, Tanzina Taher. TC Comparative and International Education, Pamela Therese Newkirk. TC History and Education, Sharon Gay Pearson. TC Measurement and Evaluation, Saranda Sonia Guga. TC Comparative and International Education, Maham Abbas Mela. Susana Martinez Restrepo. Economics and Education in TC, Izumi Yamasaki. Mathematics, Science and Technology, Bernice B. Ramallah. Theater, Timothy Earl Euchre. Urban Planning, James John Timothy Connolly.
Dale Tursa, President of the GSAS Alumni Board, will now speak to you about the Alumni Association of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. Ms. Tursa?
Thank you. Dean Alonso, Provost Coatsworth, Vice President Dirks, distinguished faculty, alumni, friends, and our most honored participants here this afternoon, our graduates, thank you very much for giving me a few minutes to address you. On behalf of the Alumni Association of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and its Board of Directors, as well as nearly 40,000 GSAS alumni worldwide, I offer our graduates a hearty congratulations on this momentous occasion and milestone in your career. I also welcome you to the next phase of your relationship with the graduate school and the university, that is, as newly minted automatic members of the GSAS Alumni Association. You thought you were through, you're just beginning. Our Alumni Association was formed over 50 years ago. Its mission is relatively simple and redefined. That is to establish and nurture a community of alumni, foster the engagement of alumni with academic and institutional initiatives of the graduate school, support the interests and needs of current GSAS students, and assist the dean in perpetuating and enhancing the reputation and prestige of GSAS. In furtherance of our mission, our board and its various committees meet several times a year, and we have held rather well-attended annual meetings here on campus, at which we have showcased interesting and provocative faculty speakers, alumni, as well as graduate students who have proudly shared their ongoing work. We're a particularly committed group of alumni who pride ourselves on having some fun together, along with our fearless leader, Dean Alonso. We have sponsored a variety of events, including career panels and alumni socials, and many of us have mentored students as they look forward to careers, including those outside the academic world. We have also helped publicize and support graduate school activities, such as departmental reunions, concerts, lectures, and it goes on. And of course, we work with and support the activities of the overarching Columbia Alumni Association. We have hosted and sponsored activities in New York, Washington, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and other cities. We even spent a weekend a few years ago at Biosphere 2 among the Ants in Oracle, Arizona. And I, along with other board members, have met with GSAS alums all around the world in London, Paris, Geneva, Beijing, and Hong Kong. How do we keep in touch? Through various ways, including mailings, the GSAS alumni newsletter called Superscript, and generally via our GSAS alumni website. We have one, gsas.columbia.edu/alumni. Many of us also follow graduate school activities via logging on to the newsletter for GSAS students, with which I'm sure you're familiar, namely 109 Low. But our success depends in part on our newest fellow alums. We need to know how to be in touch with you, so your correct email address or physical address is important. And we want to hear from you. We want you to contribute to our newsletter. If not articles, please feel free to share announcements of publications and professional achievements where you are. Give us your ideas on how we can further our mission. Come to our events, be in touch, get involved. And if you don't heed my advice and you become a rather sleepy alum, okay, here's a voluntary disclosure from a lawyer. I was a rather sleepy alum for 20 years. And if somebody from GSAS comes knocking on your door like they did mine and lets you know how much you've been missing at your #1 alma mater, you may just find yourself as the next president of the GSAS Alumni Association giving a welcome at Convocation. Congratulations again, thank you, and welcome new members of GSAS Alumni Association.
Thank you, Ms. Sturza. And now my closing remarks to the graduating class. We're engaged today in one of the most solemn moments of academic life, in a grand setting, surrounded by those dearest to us. Yet I would encourage you to examine it for the ritual that it is, with its trappings, customs, and the very silly hats. Some of you may ask rightfully whether there are times in which it would be best to suspend critical scrutiny and bask unabashedly in the joy of the moment. Life is continually presenting us with such moments of unalloyed bliss, or sorrow for that matter. Finding love, the birth of a child, the death of someone near to us. And it behooves us to give ourselves totally to those moments if we're going to have a claim to being fully alive. It is the experience of plenitude that can overwhelm you when least expected, as it does Mrs. Dalloway at one moment in the eponymous novel, and I quote, "It was a splendid morning, too. Like the pulse of a perfect heart, life struck straight through the streets. What she loved was this, here, now, in front of her. Having lived in Westminster, how many years now? Over 20? One feels, even in the midst of traffic or walking at night, a particular hush or solemnity, an indescribable pause, a suspense before Big Ben strikes. There, out it boomed. First a warning, musical, then the hour, irrevocable. The leaden circles dissolve in the air. Such fools we are, thought Clarissa Dalloway, crossing Victoria Street. For heaven only knows why one loves life so, how one sees it so, making it up, building it around one, tumbling it, creating it every moment afresh. But the truest frumps, the most dejected of miseries sitting on doorsteps, do the same. They love life. In people's eyes, in the swing, tramp, and trudge, the bellow and the uproar, the triumph and the jingle, and the strange high singing of some airplane overhead was what she loved. Life, London, this very moment in May." End of quote. But this is precisely the solace and the comfort that you have waived in the long apprenticeship that has taken you to this afternoon. Because regardless of the discipline in which you will receive your doctoral degree this coming Wednesday, what you have learned is not merely a way of asking questions about particular objects, but the very discipline of asking questions itself. Hence, you should be proud of and faithful to what you have learned here. But the discipline of asking questions requires that you not be so proud and so faithful that you be unable to critique the very education that you have acquired in this institution. In order to be continually open to the new, you must be able to take your distance from the presumed necessity of what you have learned here, to challenge the very things that define you as belonging to your institutional origin, to entertain at every turn the possibility of self-imposed exile from your academic home. Graduate programs do not necessarily prepare us well for the inevitability of intellectual change in our academic life. This is not the case because of narrowness of mind or conservatism, but simply because what we learned in graduate school was the current face of the discipline that we joined, the horizon of expectations, conventions, and rewards toward which we worked in our long apprenticeship in graduate school, and the kind of intellectual arguments and analytical moves that we saw our professors perform in class or in their work, and which we assumed as templates. This is what we reflect when we say, as if it were an explanation, that someone has a Ph.D. in anthropology from the University of Chicago, say, or a master's in Germanic studies from Columbia, or a doctoral degree in physics from Princeton. In each of our fields, we know precisely what that expression means, because graduate programs have distinct profiles, a kind of family resemblance or air that they imprint on their students, and which arises from the particular questions and interpretive strategies that the faculty of each of those programs convey to their students as the appropriate ones to entertain. Knowledge is disciplinary by definition, and we both receive it and recreate it within the optics of that disciplinarity. Yet, we must train ourselves to think outside those confines, not just because knowledge is increasingly multi- and interdisciplinary, but because, above all, what we aim to teach you was the acquisition of the vexing habit of continually challenging everything you espouse. The kind of openness to the new that I propose and the vigilance required for it to manifest itself in your scholarly life will be learned every single day. All the daily moments in which your capacity to confront change or to become the agent of change will be tested not only or even principally by what is new and unforeseen, but even more forcefully and dangerously by what is customary and what will be expected of you. It will be at such moments that you will renew the legitimacy of the degree that you're about to receive and the trust that this institution will deposit in you by granting it. At such moments, it will be worth remembering that you were not conferred this degree just because you could ask certain questions, but so you would ask questions critically, doggedly, and unsparingly, even if, perhaps especially if, the one not spared is yourself. We're immersed nowadays in a radical technological turning point that, whether we agree with it or not, has already changed thoroughly who and what we are, how we do our work, and even how we read. The symptoms of this new circumstance, whether related to the commodification of all experience that characterizes globalization, or to what may seem to us as the narcissism of the digital social networks, or to the transformation of reading into a sort of skimming, are, however, not a passing phenomenon. They are here to stay, and no amount of railing against them will change that fact. In the face of that reality, we must first be honest with ourselves, and further, and most especially, be generous with our students who do not even have the experience of another way of being, and cease expressing disappointment about the deficiencies and limitations of their novel ways of knowing. Our students know other things, possess different skills, and make other kinds of connections with the information that they possess and with the world. This openness to the new is represented by our students' performance of themselves. Is going to be, I think, the single most substantial challenge as scholars and pedagogues that we will all be facing in the near future. The humanistic shibboleth, an unexamined life, is not worth living, may not be relevant anymore when one's life is minutely, excruciatingly, and routinely displayed for conspicuous examination in Facebook, Twitter, and Vimeo. It may very well be that we will have to contend with a new understanding of the self, not based on concepts and metaphors of depth or uniqueness, one that will be articulated not in a vertical, but in a horizontal understanding of the subject. Such a transformation will have profound implications for ourselves, for our students, and for the ways in which we will understand our professional work henceforth. But most important, you will have to come to terms with these issues using the critical and intellectual tools that you have acquired in this institution and take them to their ultimate consequences, even if the kind of scholar that you were trained to be or that you thought you would be may no longer be tenable as propositions. For the gift that your Columbia graduate education has given you is to be able to entertain in your mind the most radical thought experiment. What if things were otherwise than what they are? What if you were not how you think you are, and then to reimagine the world anew? We, your professors and mentors in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, are certain that you will take meticulous care of this exacting gift of the cultivation of the otherwise. Go forth, prosper, and prevail. Make us and your relatives and friends prouder still of you than we are today. Will the candidates stand so we may give them a final round of applause, please? You're invited to a reception immediately following the ceremony on Hamilton Lawn under the tent. I ask friends and families to wait until after the faculty and the candidates have walked to the Hamilton tent before exiting to your right at the exits closest to me to Hamilton Lawn for the champagne reception. Thank you.